President Joe Biden is hosting leaders from all across African continents to the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit happening in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. And the summit is created to demonstrate the enduring commitment of the United States to Africa, and also would undercover the importance of the U.S. to Africa relationship. And this year's theme is called Amplifying Voices and Building a Long-Lasting Partnership. Today is day one, guys, and I guarantee you today's summit is going to be enlightening and impactful, and that is because Africa is ready, and indeed is ready to create and shape the future of the world. My name is Gift David, and I'm going to bring you all the highlights from the summit right here in Washington, D.C. Stick to HIPTV and see everything about the summit.
And now, I have the great pleasure and the honor of introducing His Excellency President Weah of Liberia. Now, President Weah, I happen to have been in Qatar for the World Cup, and I didn't get an opportunity to speak to you in detail then, but I wanted to thank you for all you've done to strengthen the bonds between Liberia and the United States, including through your support of the Liberian diaspora. And thanks for all that you and your family have done to support that goal too, including quite literally by scoring a few goals. So I was there, first match between the United States and Wales, and I got to cheer your son, Timothy, scoring the first goal for the United States men's soccer team in the World Cup. But the best part of that was turning around and getting a quick look at your face as you watched your son score that goal, and I could see the extraordinary pride that was there and an entire stadium cheering him on. So I guess the apple just doesn't fall too far from the tree in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of Liberia, thank you very much.
The Honorable Anthony J. Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States of America, Excellencies, colleagues, my esteemed young African leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I bring you warm greetings and best wishes from the friendly people of the Republic of Liberia. It is indeed an honor to join my colleagues from Africa to participate in this year's U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit. On behalf of the government and people of Liberia, and in my own name, I would like to extend heartfelt appreciation to the Honorable Joseph R. Biden, Jr., President of the United States of America, and the government and people of the United States for the invitation to be in attendance and participate in this important summit here in Washington, D.C. Liberia has a long and historic relationship with the United States, which has led us to having common positions on issues such as democracy, human rights, global peace and security. We hold the views that this summit will strengthen our partnership and increase our commitment to foster strong cooperation in seeking the broad interests of our respective countries in particular, and the world at large. Liberia believes that such engagement between Africa and the United States will improve and strengthen bilateral and multilateral relationships, foster peace and security on the continent of Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with millions of African descendants and migrants in the diaspora, there is no doubt that this is a vast reservoir of talent, training, expertise, and financial capacity which must and should be utilized to enhance the advancement and development of our continent. This collaborative effort will serve as the bridge connecting Africans in the diaspora back to their collective roots and cultural identities. It is therefore our responsibility as leaders to recognize and acknowledge the significance of these many millions of our compatriots living in the diaspora communities, whose contributions are necessary for the growth and development of our continent. God bless Africa. God bless Liberia. God bless the United States of America. May God bless us all. I thank you.
Biden administration recognizes the pivotal role Africa has to play and is playing in the world today, and will play with greater resources. And I think U.S.-Africa Leadership Forum, which started 2014 when President Obama was in office, is very good for everyone, good for Americans, good for Africans. We need to improve the cultural ties between Africa and the U.S. We need to also improve the economic ties. And I think having this forum with African leaders help to put that in the forefront. To me and the Tony Elumelu Foundation, and also my business heart, the United Bank of Africa, which operates in the U.S., we are happy to see closer collaboration, cooperation, and fostering of stronger economic ties and relationship between Africa and the United States of America. So, good beginning, but we want to see more action. Action, it's good to talk, but more importantly, we'd like to see action. We'd like to see what we all can do together by way of collaboration to help scale what the Tony Elumelu Foundation is doing on the African continent to help democratize law and empower our young ones. So we keep our fingers crossed. The Tony Elumelu Foundation is working with Biden on this. I hope to see greater outcome from this.
As a matter of fact, what the United States is doing, right, it's a very, very big opportunity for the Africans in the diaspora, in the sense that this is an open door to most of us who come here and go to school here, and then at the end we don't have the necessary tools to get into the industry. So these are opportunities that it's an open door to most of us. That's why we're here. And if they accept you anyway to be here, I think we have to take it very serious. This is a great opportunity that we are going down back into the world to give back this knowledge acquired in this kind of forum, this kind of platforms.
Please welcome Congressman Gregory Meeks, Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Good morning. Now, y'all was excited. I saw everybody waiting to get in here. You know that this is a big moment. You know that this is an important moment. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Let me begin by thanking Secretary Blinken and the Biden administration, and the Department of State in particular, for holding this important summit and inviting me to be a part of it. To His Excellencies, all of the African heads of states that are here, we just heard from President Weah, and I just add he's really important to me in the sense that he talked about his son, Timothy, who scored the first goal for the U.S. Well, in a democracy, all politics is local. I want you to know that Timothy lives in the 5th Congressional District of New York. So the most important thing for me in a democratic world is to make sure I get his vote. So I was back there talking to his dad about making sure I had his son vote, and said we will give him an award when he comes back to New York after working for our United States men's team, World Cup team. Look, I am the first, and I hate sometimes saying the first, but I am the first African American to chair the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And I say that because I know that that means an additional responsibility that I have. And so I told all of my colleagues that should they elect me chair, I wanted them to know that we would be moving Africa from the back burner to the front burner. We will put Africa on the map so that it is not just being heard by subcommittees, but by the full committee, so that everybody knows the importance and significance of making sure that we are engaging with the youngest and fastest growing continent on the planet called Earth. One example, sitting in the audience somewhere, I know I saw him in the background, we're gonna talk, but there's a young man that I met in Brooklyn, New York. And he decided that he had to do something for his country. First, he was in the United States as a citizen that was sworn in, but he had a feeling to go back home to his roots. And he went back and he became the ambassador to Sierra Leone, Ambassador Sadiq Y. It's that connection that is so important. So it tells us that we should recall and remember that the sense of community, and this is what I'm talking about, includes all of us, African Americans, African descendants of slaves, African immigrants with direct ties to the continent who have become among the most successful diaspora groups in the United States of America. It is a community that includes a growing list of people who have achieved some of the highest levels of success and service, and all those who continue to thrive and help build a more perfect union. So it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce His Excellency, the President of my mother home country, the President of Sierra Leone, President Bio.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first I bring you warm greetings from the Republic of Sierra Leone, my country, and that of Gregory Mix, who is my citizen in the United States. I'm very excited to be in the same room with so many people, with leaders, policy makers, policy drivers, and most importantly, young leaders from both sides of the Atlantic. I am coming from the other part of the Atlantic. And therefore, I want to use this opportunity to thank President Biden and the administration for this unique opportunity of convening with African leaders now and African leaders of the future. At several points in these discussions this morning, I am sure speakers will highlight why cooperation among Africa of now, the Africa of the future, and the African diaspora and the United States are vital. There is a burning question, and to that question, I have an answer. Does Africa matter? I will state the assertion of the United Nations that Africa contains 30% of the Earth's mineral reserves, including 40% of the world's gold and 40% of its chromium and platinum, not to mention an even greater or higher percentage of rare earth metals. And these are very much indispensable for developing and processing new and emerging technologies. Add that to 12% of the world's oil reserve and 8% of the world's natural gas reserve, plus the largest and most diverse climate ecosystem, and you will know that the world cannot make the progress it needs to make without Africa. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, the African youth of today are brave, resilient, innovative, entrepreneurial, and more determined to succeed and achieve financial independence than in previous generations. African youths are increasingly striving for the transformation they want to see across all the sectors, be it in politics, business, research, development, or ICT. The future of Africa's youth does not lie in the migration to the West or in the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. The future of Africa's youth and its economic development lies in a prosperous Africa where we invite all of you to come. Thank you.
This particular conference, which is the Diaspora Conference, it's a very good one. You see, we can't run away from the issue of the diaspora. As long as you're a black person anywhere in the world, you're from Africa. So I'm glad that this initiative is coming up at the U.S.-AFRICA Leaders Forum, where we've had discussions on the issue of the diaspora. You see, even though the historic African diaspora, you need to know the continent, you need to know the countries back home, and you need to better understand it and see what you can do and the partnership. So diaspora is about human capital development. Diaspora is about, all of us tapping into those enormous resources to develop, the continent that everybody came from. So it's been a great summit here. There's been discussions from various diaspora, and I'm glad that the Biden administration is planning to have a diaspora advisory council. Nigeria has set the pace by having a diaspora commission where we'll be able to connect with that diaspora and see what they can do and do more for the continent. So really, it's everybody's now talking diaspora. It's very important, it's very critical, and I'm glad that Nigeria has played a leading role in the issue of engaging its diaspora. So it's quite been very impactful here at the U.S.-AFRICA Leaders Summit.
So I'm very happy today to be here because as Senegalese, as French, and now here working in the United States, I can finally build this bridge between at least 3 continents and talk to all these diasporas. Today, that's why it's so important for me to work on creative industries. And when I started this job, my colleagues told me, and what about security? Because Africa is always seen as a threat and not as an opportunity. Okay, security is important. There are so many hotspots, and my friend Fali Pupa talked about the DRC and the Great Lakes and what people live there. And of course, we have to care about Ethiopia, the Horn, about the Sahel. But Africa cannot be just a problem. Africa is also an opportunity, and through creative industries, we can promote another vision from Africa and put Africa on the map, at the center of the map, at the center of the world. That is even the name of the teaching I provide at Sciences Po Paris and in Morocco, Africa at the center of the world, where it should have been stayed as the oldest continent, the youngest, and soon the largest. All these things make this continent, of course, a very strategic continent, and global Africa is a concept we should cherish beyond our people. I think Africa is everywhere, in the sculptures of ancient Greece, in the pyramids, in Picasso's paintings. So yes, global Africa is beyond the people. Global Africa is a common value for the whole humanity. And through creative industries, we talk about all these things. And the Africa Center, let me come back to my speech. The Africa Center has convened folks from all over the world to address the importance of this sector. And last year, the first summit on creative industries was in a museum, another museum, the Museum of African Arts, not so far from here, because the Smithsonian Network is doing a tremendously important job. And I noticed that a few weeks ago, the Museum of African Arts organized the return in Africa of Benin bronzes, exactly in Nigeria. So, for all this, I'm very proud to be at the heart of this network. Like I said at the very opening of this session, 2 months ago with Director Kevin Young, we organized the first screening of Wakanda Forever, Black Panther. So from the restitution of African arts to Black Panther today, something is great, something is happening around the continent, and I really would like to stress how important it is for this work to be supported. And that's why I would like to finish these remarks by thanking Open Society Foundation, specifically the West African team, for making this morning session possible. Without them, this session could not be possible. Joining us today from the foundation, Véronique Chatelain, Ibu Nyang, and Ayoka Wiles are here. So I would like just to thank them. Yesterday, we also hosted at the Africa Center in another museum, the Rundvik Gallery, another Smithsonian museum. We hosted a dinner with 12 African heads of state. It was a welcome dinner. And among them, Macky Sall, who is the president of Senegal and president of the African Union. And he said the importance of giving Africa the role it deserves as an actor. And really through fashion, music, gaming, sports, because we also hosted in another museum on the other side of the Atlantic in Dakar, in the Museum of Black Civilizations, an incredible event around sports and soft power with the NBA, which means how important it is, yes, not only to put the continent on the map again and again, but also to promote Africans as actors of their own destiny. So now, it's my pleasure to introduce Special Representative for Commercial and Business Affairs, Dilawar Syed. I would like just to say a last word to introduce him. Special Representative Syed serves as in the State Department Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs and works to advance trade, commercial, and economic policies for American workers. He leads efforts to support the export activities of US companies through commercial advocacy and to create a level playing field for US companies overseas, so hopefully on the African continent. He previously served on President Obama's White House Commission on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and chaired the White House Initiative on AAPIS Economic Growth Committee. And he has multiple leadership roles at a number of technology-focused businesses. And with that, so over to you, Special Representative Syed. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, and glad to be here. Thank you, Ambassador Yadav, for your leadership, and I want to also thank Atlantic Council for their incredible partnership working with us at the United States government, various agencies in bringing this incredible Leaders Forum together. You know, I was last night participating in the dinner that Atlantic Council hosted. We had President Sall of Senegal, who spoke eloquently and beautifully about the history, the challenges, but the promise that Africa holds as we move forward. As the ambassador quickly shared, let me just spend a minute on my background and my role. As Special Representative of Commercial and Business Affairs, I run commercial diplomacy globally for the US at the State Department. And part of my job is to make sure that the US private sector's voice is heard, but also that we get to partner very closely with entrepreneurs, with innovators, with creative entrepreneurs like yourself. And there is just so much potential for us to move forward, especially as we get to convene the entire leadership from Africa. Prior to joining the administration, I was in the tech world. I spent more than 2 decades in Silicon Valley building software companies, consumer media companies. And I'm also, let me also mention, I'm also a part of a diaspora group. As an Asian American, I have seen personally the power and resourcefulness of diasporas, especially when it comes to building new industries. Almost 1/2 of all tech founders in the United States are of Asian descent, and many of them were born outside the United States. They have been able to leverage their relationships, their resourcefulness, but very importantly, their understanding of the world, the regions where they come from. So when they build those products, they truly have a global lens. So there's a lot that we can leverage from that experience as we look at the African diaspora. Now, when it comes to African diaspora, we have 2 million Americans of African descent who have adopted the United States in recent decades. But there is 15% of us that are also of African descent, African Americans. So this diaspora is powerful. It is huge. And let me just say this, it is us. So that's why when we talk about the African diaspora, we say it very simply, Africa is us. And so when it comes to US creative entrepreneurs, and I've met some of you in the back room, you have a huge opportunity to work with this incredible asset that we have in the United States. With the affinity, the cultural affinity folks have, relationships they have with Africa, and their desire, strong desire to support you. Now, as creative entrepreneurs, as Ambassador Yadev mentioned, I think you are in a unique role. You're in a unique, I would say, historic role that not only you get to build great companies, but you actually get to shape and own the narrative for Africa. And we know this, that Africa as a continent has faced probably some of the most darkest moments in human history. We have to be clear about that. We're also faced with such incredible opportunity at this time. When you look at the role of tech, the fact that we're all coming together post-COVID, there's an opportunity for us to build on this moment. The second is about IP. The very nature of your product is one that we want to make sure that your product, your IP is protected. Obviously, we want to make sure the US content is well placed when it comes to IP, but we want to also make sure that you all feel confident as you build your enterprises. So to that end, we will partner with governments around Africa to help ensure that IP regulations are modernized. And entrepreneur, when they are writing their business plan or their creation at the back of the envelope, can feel very confident that it will be protected. So with that, let me leave you with one quick advice. I know many of you have come from around the continent. One of the best things we get to do as diplomats is to help convene our partners around the world. It's an incredible opportunity for you to meet folks from around Africa, but also from folks from across the United States. Make the most of it. Build these relationships. Many of these folks will open doors for you in ways that you can't even imagine. So with that, thank you. Again, honored to be here. And I appreciate your being here, and I hope you have a productive summit. Thank you.
My name is Araolu Apopola, the creative founder of Aramanda Couture Limited, and I'm one of the exhibitors at the U.S.-Africa Leadership Summit to showcase our tunics, African items, and our perfume. I've been doing this for a little over 10 years. I'm from Nigeria, Oyo State, Ibadan specifically. And I started in my garage in Ibadan back in 2011. And right now we're selling on a global scale. Well, we're the infusion of the Western and African designs meeting at the center point. So when people come to this stand, we want them to see the representation of Africa in the form of our tunics and in the form of our designs and our creations.
My name is Miyasa Kali. I am here exhibiting with Peace Corps. Super excited to be here. It's such an awesome opportunity to be able to meet with different people who are passing through, but also see so many different creatives and different African leaders and just different exhibitors come through the museum. Absolutely loving it. Peace Corps, we are a federal agency. We send volunteers abroad for 27 months. So if ever you're interested in checking out us and who we are and what we do, check out www.peacecorps.gov.
So this museum is one of the newest Smithsonian museums, and we're actually here for a field trip today. We're part of an African American Studies class at Light Ridge High School in Virginia, and we're just here to learn more about African American history and culture overall. Yes, so I actually knew that it was going on today this morning, and I thought it was really cool. When I first came in, I saw all the different vendors, I saw a lot of interviews, a lot of officials here today, so it looks really promising. I'm really excited to see what you guys have to offer.
Please welcome Toyin Owesu Uhuebu and today's panelists to the stage.
Wow, good morning. Still good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited about joining this panel and leading as a moderator. As you all know, the African film and TV industry is rapidly expanding, reaching new audiences across the world. Through storytelling, filmmakers and producers across the continent are showcasing their diversity of the continent, giving global audiences a renewed look into African culture, lifestyle, and building bridges between Africa and its diaspora through entertainment. So, just to give you a little background about this session, we are going to take a deep dive into owning the narrative, how effective public-private partnerships are, and the growth of the film and TV and music sector, and how these sectors can become engines for culture, economy, and growth. So I would like to begin by introducing our esteemed panelists. And first I have to my left, Dorothy Gatuba. Dorothy is Netflix's Director of Local Languages series in Sub-Saharan Africa. Dorothy has been tasked with working with African creatives to tell and take African stories to the rest of the world. Welcome, Dorothy. Next, we have Jason Chukwuma Njoku. Jason is the founder of Njoku Holdings, a family-owned global internet investment holding company which builds and invests primarily in Nigerian digital consumer market, media, and entertainment. Over the last decade, the company has created some of the largest and well-known startups out of Nigeria, including Hiroko TV, Rock, which is a content production and linear TV and distribution, and a new startup, Raptures Entertainment, creating original and webtoons, comics, and animations. Welcome, Jason. And next we have Amarachi Nwosu. Amarachi is a Nigerian-American, self-taught filmmaker, artist, writer, and producer. She is also the founder of Melanin Unscripted, a creative studio and media platform that produces stories, conversations, and experiences centered around underrepresented narratives that are both timely and timeless. And I would also like to say she's a fellow Temple Owl.
Alrighty.
Welcome, Amarachi. And next we have Linus Idahosa. He is the founder and president of the Del York International Group and the visionary behind the Del York Creative Academy, one of the largest international schools for film and television in Africa. Welcome, Linus. And next we have Wilmot Allen. Wilmot is the co-founder of the International Writers Lab, an accelerator and fellowship program for experienced writers of film and television. The program showcases African writing talent, connects the film and television ecosystems to Hollywood's creative talent and content buyers, facilitates deals for writers, and catalyzes job creation and investment into the creative sector. Welcome, Wilmot. And last but not least, we have Tunde Ajaba Ogundikpe, popularly known as Tunde. He's a first-generation Nigerian-American music tech executive, podcast host, and entrepreneur. Tunde currently serves as the SVP and GM of African Music Strategy and Culture at Sony Music, The Orchard. And lastly, Tunde also hosts an African pop culture podcast called Nowahala, along with his co-host, Bao Lawal. Thank you. So I'd love to get this conversation started, and I have a couple questions for our panelists, and then we will also open it up to attendees here as well for questions. So my first question is to you, Jason. What are the biggest barriers to exporting African content to global markets? And what early steps did you take with Iroko TV to either eliminate or minimize these barriers?
So I think, obviously, thank you for being here, etc., protocols, all of it. In really simple terms, I think what definitely Nigerians have, they have an embedded audience everywhere in the world. So here in North America, across Western Europe, in other parts of the world, wherever you find typically Nigerians, they love their own culture. So they go into Nigerian churches, they eat Nigerian food, they listen to Nigerian content. So you actually have an embedded audience everywhere. I think the key thing is you have to find content which works for them. So my view is always that you have to go like narrow and deep. So if you go in Nigeria, you have to go like really Nigeria, you have to go like really local so they understand it. Like, you know, people are looking for like a watered down version of what they know because they're so far away from home. I find that like, you know, the more Nigerian you make it, the more local, the more, if you go in Igbo, you go Ibotic. If you go in Yoruba, you go, you know, full, you go full throttle. You don't water it down. You literally have to give it, have to sort of like go that way. I guess just to sort of like kind of crystallize that. If a song gets big in Lagos, it gets big around the world. It's very rare you find a song that gets big in a Nigerian song that gets big in the West and then comes back into Nigeria. So if it's not banging on the streets of like Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, then it's not really doing anything or shaking anything in a great way. So I think the important thing is just to know who you are and just basically export that version, because that's what people really want.
Thank you for that. So my next question is to Amarachi. Through your work at Melanin Unscripted and projects in major markets around the world, I've had a chance to look at some of your great work. What opportunities and trends are you seeing in the short form digital media space for content creators? You know, we have, you know, this is a Young Leaders Forum. That's definitely a space that is rapidly growing, especially with social media. So I'd love to hear, you know, some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so in case you guys can't hear me, I'm not sure if my mic is working, but as a self-taught filmmaker, I've directly firsthand I've learned how the digital landscape has really changed things, especially because like I taught myself through YouTube. Many of us have gone through YouTube University, you know, and so I remember coming up and like thinking about being a young person that's Nigerian American. I would be bringing photos, for example, to just share with people, hey, like this is what Africa actually looks like. And so in order to change that narrative, and what we have with this digital landscape now is I don't need to bring a photo into my classroom. I can now show them on my story, on my phone. Every one of us who has a phone right now is a storyteller because we have the ability to write our story, to share our story, but also be our story. And we have access to that. One of my first documentaries I did was called Black in Tokyo. I lived in Tokyo for 2 years. And before I came, I didn't know what the Black experience would be like. But I decided to actually navigate that, but also share that with people. I was able to film it with my own 2 hands by myself and along with some team members in my class, but also the opportunity for the internet is to be able to collaborate with your peers. You don't have to always look up or try to find someone on LinkedIn. It could be your friend, it could be someone in your community. We have the ability to collaborate in that sense and tell our stories. So I was able to package this, put it together, edit it myself, share it, and reach over 1.6 million viewers on YouTube. What would have happened? Thank you so much. It's like, would that have been possible 10 years ago? And because of that, because of taking the risk and not waiting for gatekeepers to validate me, because I know that I have a story to tell and I'm worthy to tell that story. And every single person in this room has a story to tell. You're a change maker, which is why you're here in this room. You've been selected to be in this present room. And so because of that, sharing that story and being able to, I was able to go from doing Black in Tokyo to doing my first feature-length documentary called The Ones Who Keep Walking, which is about African creatives. We work with over 250 creatives across the continent, many of them who are also self-taught, that learned from the internet, learned from putting out their work. A lot of this was their first feature-length projects for a lot of them. And because they took the risk to put out their work and share their stories, we were able to pay attention and share that. But for many people, they don't see that possibility because they feel like they have to get access to a major film executive. But we know now that we don't have to do that. And so really, it's just about telling our stories. If you have a phone, and you have a story, you can share it. Don't wait for anybody, but be willing to put it on these platforms, because you can find your consumer and you're limitless, you're boundless in that sense.
Thank you. Great words of advice from real experience. And so I know you touched upon digital, but I want to kind of bring this back to the film space. And Tunde, I'm looking right at you. You've been at the center of music and film in many of the projects that you've worked on, and one very recently, Woman King. I'd love to just hear from you as to what are some of the trends and opportunities you're seeing as far as like African content and stories going global and just becoming more widely accepted in more audiences.
Thank you, Toyin. Before I start, I want to give a shout out to Jason, because I didn't know he was going to be on this panel, but I'm actually a huge fan of him, and I honestly think that I wouldn't have been able to do what I did at Spotify and even now at Sony without seeing Jason's work. I was raised in Connecticut, but very immersed in a very Yoruba Nigerian household, and seeing people like Jason create things for the continent, by the continent, and create streaming services and empowering creatives inspired me to be able to tell stories and advance narratives with the resources I had as well, right? So you talk about the work that we've been doing at Sony with like The Woman King and prior with projects like Black is King, Beyonce. It's been really, really great to see narratives concerning Africa penetrate the pop culture space in ways that I don't think we've seen to this level ever, and probably most comparable to maybe like the early 2000s when the internet started to kind of become something that was penetrating African homes. It's really cool to see stories that are authentic, or as authentic as possible, being told by our people and to our people. Black Panther was another wave that we can talk about, where a narrative was driven by Marvel, right? But then also the soundtrack for that picture shook everyone, like pulling all these African artists from across the continent and creating a narrative through music that was able to not just fit the film, but propel the film into a different space. I think those are important. I think more of that is coming. I think that trend is something that's going to hopefully go upwards.
I'd like to turn to you, Wilma, and also just talk a bit about some of the work that you've done with International Writers Lab. What advice do you give fellows trying to navigate some of the business elements that they will face, such as contract negotiations, financial marketing, and distribution? Because there's always the creative side, but there's also the business side, which is very important. And I'd love to hear your advice on that.
Sure. So in the spirit of acknowledging the influence of peers on the panel, I just want to say thank you to Dorothy Katuba, because when I arrived in Kenya about 6 years ago, and was interested in film through her company Spillworks, she took me in and took me around the ecosystem and explained to me how things work there. The International Writers Lab was founded in 2021, and being very intentional about connecting the Hollywood ecosystem with that of Africa, and more specifically, historical diaspora with contemporary diaspora with the people of Africa. Very intentional about that. And one of the things that we've done is also be very strategic about our partnerships. So myself and Pauline Fisher of Pauline Fisher Media, who worked at Netflix back in the day. Some of you may not remember, but you watched Netflix on DVDs. So back in the day, she was part of the acquisitions group and actually helped acquire Beast of No Nation with Mr. Elba. And also the Black House Foundation, which is a trade association that promotes diversity in Hollywood. We had other sponsors, local as well as international.
And I think it's very important that you mentioned like the work that you've done in going to different countries and really understanding that, yes, one continent, but there are differences. And so being able to know that what might be work in Nigeria may not necessarily be the same process in Kenya is really important. As we're on the topic of work and supporting content creators, Linus, I'd like to talk to you about some of the work that you've done, and what do you recommend for creators who are working in a place where the necessary infrastructure or equipment isn't available, or there aren't people around them with the technical skills they need to support their work?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So I think beyond anything else, that Africa as it stands needs a very bold vision. And it starts with understanding first what it is that we have as a people. Over the past 10 to 12 years, we've been actively involved in building capacity for those in the creative industry across the continent. But we understood something very clearly. We understood the fact that we needed to be in a space where the types of creative content coming out from Nigeria, which is our place of origin, was that could compete favorably with any production house anywhere in the world. And so we had a 10-year plan, was very clear. Identify strategic institutions in the States. Ensure that these are institutions that are familiar with hands-on training programs. And then seek for new ways to bridge the gap between academia and industry. Knowing that Nigeria as an industry has grown to become the second largest film industry in the world, with little or no support from the government or the private sector, it grew organically itself. The time had now come for an infrastructure that would help take the industry to where it needs to be, in terms of a home, where filmmakers can, within themselves, create an ecosystem that will move the continent forward.
Thank you. You've touched on a lot of great points, and panelists, you've given some great feedback. So I have one last question here. And Dorothy, you know this is for you. So we've talked about film, we've even talked about digital from a social perspective, but I'd love to hear from you about how the rise in streaming platforms have impacted the African entertainment industry, and what opportunity does it afford to African filmmakers and also the audiences?
So I'll start by saying that in front of us we have a clock here and it's telling me that I don't have time. But I'm gonna plug Netflix because everybody's plugged their company. I'll tell you this, we are in the business of entertaining the world. And what is exciting about this is that Africa is part of the world. And so in 3 ways, I can answer your question. 1 is that African storytellers are owning their narrative. And we know that in the past, our narrative has not been our own. So this is what streaming platforms like Netflix are doing. They're saying to African creators, you tell your stories, you tell it to your people, to the local audiences. This is why I'm excited being part of the local language team. First, entertain your audience. And what a joy it is to see yourself, your stories, people like you on screen. That's amazing. Then we take it to the next level. The stories are going around the world. Netflix, 220 million plus subscribers with a switch across the world. So our stories are now going across the world. That's what's really exciting. That is something that streaming platforms like Netflix are doing.
Thank you so much.
I think one of the fundamental challenges has always been the fact that we focus so much on artistry, right? The gift of our talents. There's a lot that has to do with intentional planning and seeing the creative industry as a business, right? Instead of just an opportunity to shine and to be out there, to be seen, right? And to do that, there is a certain level of study that needs to go on for young filmmakers and those in the creative industry. By that, I mean training.
You know, really, I was motivated to learn how to tell stories myself, mainly because obviously coming from a Nigerian household, my mom wanted me to get into the traditional route. So I actually graduated in international communications. But that really informed me on the fact that there's global stories that need to be told, especially stories in Africa. For so long, African creators have not been able to tell their own story. And now we have that opportunity to go to platforms like YouTube and learn things, even go to platforms like TikTok and learn things, but also utilize our community. Some of the most incredible filmmakers that I know coming out of the continent have taught themselves. And so really what that is showing is the resilience and the ability to do it without the validation, do it without the gatekeepers, but also utilize the resources that are directly around you. Instead of looking up or looking for somebody who might have the biggest expertise, collaborate with your friends, because those are the people that are going to support your vision as you go along the journey, and they're going to go with you along that journey. But also utilize the resources that you do have. If you have a phone, if you're watching this from your phone, if you're watching this anywhere, how can you utilize that tool? How can you utilize your phone to write the story that you want, but to share the story that you want? So ultimately, we all have the ability to tell our own story, and we have access, but utilize your community, utilize the resources that you have, and don't focus on what you don't have. Utilize what you do have.
I'm fascinated with speaker boxes and turntables, and I couldn't afford them. I used to turn my cereal boxes into speakers. Okay? Now, that's poverty, but it's also innovation. I can't tell you if there is a dedicated platform for connecting diaspora to business, but I know that you can use existing platforms to do the same. You can be innovative in that way. You can use LinkedIn, you can use social media, you can amplify your photography, your voice, okay, with people that are like-minded that want to do business with you. That is about being innovative with your thought, with your connection skills. In West Africa for a long time, to speak to one village, they used the talking drum, and they used these rhythms that would go from one place to another. In some parts, they used this huge tree, and they bang on the tree, and the other village will hear that. So for us, we have telephones, we have the internet, and we have, connective. You just have to reach out further and find ways to just look for those people that are wanting to see pictures from Cape Verde, that want to see new images from Africa. I think that's something that we have to remind our youth, when you come from a generation where we didn't have half of this technology, right now there are kids that are making movies, films, posters, videos, video games on their phones. When I was growing up, we didn't have a computer that could do all of that. So we do have to be innovative. We do have to really dig into our exploratory sort of curiosity and find ways to do it, yeah?
My name is Dr. Sheon Adigun. I'm the first African Summer and Winter Olympian and the driver of the historic Nigerian women's bobsled team. I have served as a global ambassador for Nigeria in the diaspora over sports and entertainment in many capacities, using sports as my engine. I feel like this is one of those places where when we're able to come together as Africans in the diaspora, whether we are African American, African European, African Caribbean, we're able to share in our experiences and really come together to express what type of partnerships are necessary for us to advance as a continent. As the youngest continent, as a thriving continent, this is one of those places where we really set the groundwork for the work that needs to be done for us to see opportunities for our youth in the future.
I am so grateful to be here with the many dynamic, dedicated leaders who are working hard to chart a more peaceful and prosperous future for us all. From exploring innovative solutions, from improving higher education, from addressing the impacts of climate change, or strengthening economic opportunity, today's forum has shown that young people are not just important, but essential to solving some of the world's most pressing challenges. I bring you right now, it is truly my pleasure to bring to the stage the President of Ghana, President Akufo-Addo.
Madam Vice President, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the African and Diaspora Young Leaders Forum for making me part of this conversation and for the opportunity to deliver these remarks at the closing plenary in the presence of the U.S. Vice President, the Honorable Kamala Harris, And in this spectacular building, so admired by all Ghanaians, and indeed by all Africans, as it was designed by one of the foremost architects of his generation, the globally acclaimed Ghanaian architect, David Adjaye. The second half of the 20th century witnessed a great blow for human progress and freedom when the African peoples, in the wake of Ghana's shining example, liberated themselves from the colonial and imperialist yoke and the racist ideology of apartheid and emerged as free, independent peoples to construct new nations of hope and advancement. The first half of the 21st century should consolidate this development and see the growth of modern, prosperous, technologically advanced nations within a united Africa, which would make a reality of the dream of the 21st century as the African century, and bring dignity and respect to Black people all over the world. We've done enough talking, and dare I say we've had enough conferences and workshops. We know what we need to do. It is time just to do it. We've run out of excuses for the state of our continent. We have the manpower, we should have the political will. It is time to make Africa work.
My name is Fanta Traore, and I'm from Mali. And I am also a diasporan. I was raised in the Bronx. I'm currently a dual degree student at Yale University, studying for my master's in public policy, as well as my master's in business administration, and I'm focused on investing in Africa. This event is going to benefit youth across the continent because of the kinds of conversations that are cultivated in this very unique space, the African American Museum here in DC. This did not exist previously. It's off the heels of a presidency that was disparaging the dignity of African people. And so for this to happen in this moment, in this space, is creating an opportunity for conversations to happen that should have been, and that are going to create opportunities for young youth across the continent because of the kinds of partnerships that are being established, the discussions we're having around workforce development, and the power that happens when you get a unique group of people who are committed to a mission in the same space.
Please welcome Wally Adeyemo, Deputy Secretary of the Treasury.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. And as they mentioned, my name is Wally Adeyemo, and I am the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. And I want to thank the President of Ghana for being here today and for his efforts to strengthen the African diaspora community. The success of Ghana's Year of the Return in 2019 is an inspiring example of how to draw on the United States' large and engaged diaspora communities to build closer ties between Ghana, Africa, more broadly, and the United States. For me, a number of my friends had an opportunity to go to the continent for the first time during the Year of the Return, and to think about their role and their relationship with the continent that we have all come from. As all of you know, I am not the most senior person to serve in the U.S. government from the African diaspora. I had an opportunity to work for President Obama, both in his administration, but also helping to run his foundation. And part of what all of us know as young leaders in the African diaspora, which I consider myself part of this community, is that critical to our abilities to succeed is being able to see ourselves in leaders who have come before us, finding the type of mentors and examples that have blazed a path for us. And today I have the ability to introduce one of those mentors for me, one of those leaders who have blazed a path that has allowed me to be in the role that I'm in today, and that is Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please have a seat. Good afternoon. To Deputy Secretary Adeyemo, thank you for all you do. I will tell you what many of you probably know about him from the implementation of the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act to your sites, Wally, on what is important about strengthening economic relationships in Africa and around the world. You have been an extraordinary leader. And so to our Deputy Secretary of Treasury, let us please applaud his great role of leadership. President Akufo-Addo, it is wonderful to see you back in Washington again. I thank you for your work to strengthen the ties between our nations and our people. And to my dear friend, Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker, thank you for always being a voice in the United States Senate on the importance of the U.S.-Africa relationship. And to the hundreds of young leaders from Africa and around the United States who are with us today, welcome. And thank you for your leadership and participation. Africa is the oldest inhabited continent in the world, and it is home to the youngest population in the world. So Africa cannot help but be in the future business. I strongly believe that the creativity and ingenuity of Africa's young leaders will help us shape the future of the world. And that their ideas, your ideas, and innovations and initiatives will benefit the entire world. The Biden-Harris administration intends to be right there alongside you, these young leaders, knowing it is the spark and determination of young people that will drive and move us forward. And we are particularly excited about this future, as we are to host the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit this week. In the coming days, as well as the months and years ahead, our administration will invest our time and our energy to fortify partnerships across the continent. Partnerships that, importantly, are grounded in candor, openness, inclusiveness, shared interests, and mutual benefits. And overall, our administration will be guided not by what we can do for Africa, but what we can do with Africa. In recent decades, the United States and African countries have worked together to spur economic growth and expand trade capacity across the continent. And so within the next 2 years, the Biden-Harris administration would have invested more than $1 billion in education and youth programming in Africa, which will allow us to further our partnership with African academic institutions and the private sector on education and research in science, technology, engineering, and math. And it will allow us to expand our signature program for African youth. So let us work together to foster the spark of creativity and ingenuity in Africa's young leaders. Throughout history, in moments of uncertainty and change, the world has often turned to young people to help lead the way forward. Now is no different. So to Africa's young leaders, I say, I am an optimist about what lies ahead for Africa and by extension for the world. Because of you, because of your energy, your ambition, and your ability to transform seemingly intractable problems into opportunities. Simply put, your ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been. I thank you all. Thank you.
It's really been a great opportunity to be here and listen to all the great speakers, all the heads of states. In particular, I was excited to hear the commitment that Vice President Harris has made to really strengthen the coalition between Africa and the U.S. It's a really inspiring space to be in with all of the different wonderful entrepreneurs from the continent, to be in a place where you can be with your peers that are also equally motivated to make sure that we're making progress on the continent together.
So I think this summit will impact the youth in Africa because we have always seen some result. Think about YALI, for example. YALI have been selecting young leaders from all over Africa, and we could see a lot of impact those people have been doing. So those kind of skills, if we keep supporting that in this situation where we bring in more young African leaders, learn from how things is done in US and bring it back home, try to impact their society, I think that's something I think is great. So it brings innovation through diversity. So that's my key word on that, and I think this is a very good opportunity for we young Africans.
Been working on this U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit for the past 18 months, and we're just truly excited and humbled to finally be here today. You know, President Biden has invited African leaders across the continent to Washington, D.C. It's the second time we're hosting this kind of a summit in 8 years, and so it's been a long time. And so lots of excitement, lots of anticipation, lots of expectations. And I think one thing for me that's been really resonating with our African partners is our level of collaboration and partnership. And so at the core of our priorities, at the core of our engagement, we have truly paid close attention to ensuring that we are partnering with our African partners on the summit. We've had sessions from our health, security and partnership, climate and energy, trade and investment, even a U.S.-Africa Space Forum. It's the first time we actually had a space forum at this summit. And so we're really hoping to elevate our partnership and for us to ensure that we can send the message that we're not just talking about what we're going to do in Africa, but what we're going to do with Africa. We cannot, achieve global objectives or even address global problems without our African partners. And so partnerships have been the core and the center of the priorities throughout the summit. Well, since we're here, we're at the African and Diaspora Young Leaders Forum. And for the first time, we were very intentional about ensuring that we could elevate the role of the diaspora in this forum and ensure that we were talking to young leaders, right? Giving them the space to actually come up with solutions to the different global challenges and the different opportunities that we have. And so whether it's in higher education, environmental equity, or the creative industries, this forum has been a platform for us to talk about bridging gaps and building connections and elevating our role with the diaspora. Africa has, the youngest population. And so it was very important for us to ensure that we could listen to our young leaders and give them a platform to come up with solutions. And then also create a space for the diaspora to also, be brought into those conversations. And so this forum, throughout the day, we've heard from the Vice President, we've heard from the presidents of Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Liberia. It's been an amazing, amazing time. We've had the creative industries involved, actor Idris Alba, Yvonne Orji. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing. And not only that, but the president just signed an executive order to elevate the role of how the U.S. can engage with the African diaspora. And so for us, bridging those ties, strengthening those ties between African communities, the diaspora in the United States, and the global diaspora, it's important to us. The president has signed an executive order to show that, and so we're looking forward to engaging with the youth. One of our cornerstone initiatives is our Young Africa Leaders Initiative, and so YALI has been an amazing initiative that has really invested in Africa's youth. They've also worked on developing a platform to engage the diaspora as well. So we're really excited. Lots of things that will be rolled out. This is, not the end. It's for us, it's just the beginning. We want to create spaces for Africa's young leaders, and it's not the next generation, it's the now generation. And so we want to engage with Africa's youth. You know, you all have the ideas, the innovation, the entrepreneurship, and so we want to be able to strengthen the capacity for Africa's youth to really, you know, lead out on what they need to do. And so it's been an amazing time, lots to do, and so we look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
An impactful summit. I mean, the U.S.-Africa Summit or Leadership Summit has been really impactful. We've heard from different world leaders. President of Ghana was here, the President of Cameroon was here, and of course we heard from the Vice President of America, Kamala Harris, and she also told us about the commitment that the United States is making towards Africa and the African youth in diaspora. I mean, this is beautiful. I have been impacted. I'm sure you guys have been impacted as well. So this is where I get to wrap it up on the first day of the United States to Africa Leadership Summit. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now.